listeners, it's Peps and I'm here to present to you the 2022 Greater Western Sydney season preview. I could only get the best when it came to the GWS. I've reached out far and wide and we have secured ourselves. We have got the aficionado in everything to do with the Greater Western Sydney Giants. We have PMBangers from the subreddit on Reddit, GWS style. Great man, welcome to Lace Out.
Peps, thanks for having me. I feel like, you could get done for false advertising me, calling me the best, but I'm glad that you're backing me.
Anyone who responds to me is the best. That's what anyone can be the best, but if you're putting your agates on the chopping board to say, hey, I'm willing to give my opinion, you're the best in my eyes. Rightio, GWS. Geez, they've had an interesting number of years, the last few, haven't they? They've been up and down. They had that grand final appearance there. We call them the Ferrari down here in Melbourne. We just think that they're going to take over the world. And they like I've said on previous, they're the Ferrari running on two cylinders at the moment. They just can never get the third or the fourth clicking. They've done it once, which they made a grand final, got blown completely out of the water. 2021 was interesting, the way they finished it. Like at one stage you thought, how are they going to even get close to finals? And they were able to, and more importantly, win one.
Yep.
Due to injuries and probably a couple other factors, didn't get across the line to Geelong. So there is a bit of optimism there. Got the great man, Toby Green, who I have a secret man crush on. I love him, just love everything he does about footy. It's going to be an interesting year for the Giants. Give us a bit of an idea. How do you see it happening? How do you see 2022 panning out for the big sound from the west of town?
Look, we're obviously a young club, but over our short history, I've learnt never to be too optimistic about the Giants because, there's no other team that's going to fail your expectations quite like the Giants. But I think it'll be a good year. As you said, we ended the season last year really well and we got some games into some of our youngsters. And I think we're starting to see that we're relying less on a smaller core of elite players, apart from Toby, who obviously is just so important to our structure. So I'm looking forward to, this year being one where we see almost a transition from relying on the likes of Whitfield and Kelly and Davis in the back line and seeing guys like Sam Taylor and Jacob Hopper and Tom Green really take the next step.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at your list and your sort of profile. You've got that really solid core that we've known for probably 5 or 6 years now. Yeah. And then there's a gap of, in all due respect, no names that were like, I don't know enough about him, and I don't know enough about him because, like you said, the Cornelios, Kellys, Toby Green, Reed. I'm just trying to throw some other ones in there. Finlayson, obviously he's gone. Yeah. Phil Davis, Matt DeBall, all these sort of guys have been around for. We've seen them grow from kids into men, and now we've had them as such a focus for so long. The newer ones that are sliding in, we don't know enough about them because we don't see them every single week.
Yeah.
So out of that current crop of the new ones, sprouting, does there anyone sort of catch your eye so far from what you've seen, from what you've heard?
Yeah. So Tom Green, I think, is the obvious one. He was our sort of first pick, or not first pick, but our big academy selection in 2019. And he's sort of just gone stride from stride, improving each year. And from what we're hearing, it looks like he'll get some more time in the midfield this year and his fitness is the best it's ever been. We do naturally hear that about a lot of players at a lot of clubs. But
mate, I can tell you there's 18 clubs flying at the moment. Sorry, Adelaide are not flying. Adelaide are not doing anything. They're shocking.
We're training the house down by all reports. But
everybody's setting PBs,
Yeah, Green's probably the one to watch there. I think we'll see a more contested focus from our side this year just based on what we're seeing from Match Sim and what we're hearing about who's playing where. So, and, he's a contested beast. So I'm looking forward to him taking the next step. I think Tanner Brunn was our first selection in the 2020
draft. On my list. Yep.
Yeah. So he got a few games last year and he's just such a classy player. He probably didn't get the midfield opportunities that we would have liked to see because he is a really hard at it player when he's in the midfield as well. And that combination of class and hardness isn't easy to find, but we're thinking that he'll probably fill in that Toby Green role for the first sort of 5-6 rounds where Toby won't be there. So that'll be a really exciting prospect to see him sort of grow into that role. And hopefully continue on even when Green returns.
Yeah, we've got to speak about the great man, because I don't think you're a football lover if you don't like Toby Green. I know people love him or people hate him, but I can tell you what, there's 17 other clubs, maybe 16 if you don't count the Bulldogs, that would love to have him on their list. All right. So from the inside sanctum of the forums with the GWS supporters, etc., what was the consensus with what happened? Not more about the actual incident, because we saw it, everybody saw it, but the 6 weeks that he got.
Yeah, look,
what do you reckon?
I think your facial reaction sort of sums it up there for us. Is we were very confused, but it's sort of to be expected with how respecting the umpires is spoken about, even if actions don't always reflect what the AFL is trying to push. But it was pretty clear cut that he's touched an umpire. The AFL is going to get what they want in that circumstance. So I think we were pretty happy when he got the initial, I think it was 4 initially.
They pumped it up a few extra.
And then, when we heard that there was the appeal, we're like, all right, well, we're missing him for the first 3, 5, 6 games of next year. It's
going to be tough, because I think your start isn't exactly an easy one either. So, and he's just, like, if you have a look at what he did, I know he turned a game against Melbourne last year at the MCG last year when you beat the Ds. He was the one who took that game. Like, if you watch the comments rolling through, or the commentary, it was green. Yeah. He was just tearing it apart too. And he's a massive gap to fill, because it's not just he has that bravado about him.
Yeah.
But he can back it up as well too.
Yeah.
That's what everybody loves about him. Yeah, he plays on the edge, but they're the ones that we really, really like.
Yeah.
Now, another couple of people that I want to bring my eyes to, Tim Taranto, he's just getting better and better. What's he going to be? Like, what's the community reckon about, like, that guy? Because by the fact he's got 10% added toughness with his tats.
Yeah.
Loves a good thigh tat. But what is it about Timmy Taranto that the community can be hearing or thinking, hey, 2022, where's he going to go?
Yeah, we're hoping so. But I think realistically, just with our midfield depth and the rotations through there, and, I've already spoken about Green will probably be stepping up into a more permanent role. So Taranto will probably spend his time forward where, he's had moments where he's been effective. Like, he kicked 4 goals against Richmond last year when he was stationed up forward for half the game. So we're hoping that he can develop into that role and be sort of a genuine game-changing mid-forward, because it's going to have to happen for him and probably a few of our other midfielders for them to, I guess, remain at the top.
Another one I have to ask about, when you were talking about goals, he started like a house on fire and then sort of fizzled out towards the end a little bit, was Mr. Riccardi, Jake Riccardi. Now, what's going on with him? Because at one stage they were thinking there were going to be clubs throwing dollars at this guy to get him back down to Melbourne.
Yeah.
Hasn't said that way. He's going to be there till at least the end of 2023. Is there a spot for this guy? Because if there isn't, I'm starting to wonder, well, is he going to hang around? What are your thoughts?
It's a hard one, because I feel like our key forward, our KPF sort of list is underwhelming overall. I think, Hogan, I think, is a really good player when he's up and about, but how often is he actually on field? He's injured a lot. Himmelberg is sort of more of a, he plays like he's smaller than he is. So I think there's that opportunity for Riccardi to come in and impact, but it's sort of hard to say, because I think that what Himmelberg brings is that when he's not taking marks and he's not impacting up forward, is he pushes up the ground, he offers that defensive pressure, and he has that sort of second one wood to his game where he can be a link-up player. Hogan's always going to take contested marks. That's his specialty, whereas Riccardi sort of, if he's not getting them laced out to him, he can struggle a bit to impact. And then he was trialled in the back line in the NEFL and he did well there, but it just didn't translate at AFL level.
So is he going to be one of these guys that could be a good VFL level player, but may not be able to have that consistency at the AFL level just yet? Because how old is he? 23?
I think he's only 22 still.
22, 23, yeah.
He is still young for a key position player, so there's that promise. And obviously, like, he hasn't had that extended amount of time in an AFL environment like others have. Like, he's been on the list during the COVID-affected season, so it's hard to, I guess, say that his development has been subpar, because he's probably just doing the best with the opportunities he's gotten. But yeah, I'm optimistic for him. I think that he's got a lot of weapons. He's a good lead-up player in the forward line particularly, and his patterns are really impressive. So if he can maybe find a few ways to impact the game other than lead-up marking, then I think he'll be a really good player.
Now, you mentioned about your forward stocks. Massive fan of Hogan. Like, when he was at my club, love him to death. Like, he was just awesome. You can understand why he went back to Fremantle. Didn't work out. He's at your club now, and I think we saw some signs in a couple of games. I know the Adelaide game was one that it stood out a little bit, where he was getting a little bit of that mojo back. Yeah. And as the season wore on and he got some more consistency on the park and his body was feeling consistent, he started to show a little bit of that old Jessiness about him. Is there expectation on him to take that next level, or is there, hey, just build into it slowly?
Yeah, I think supporters probably want him to take that next step pretty quickly, but all the messaging from the club has sort of suggested that we're happy to let him bide his time, I guess, and work into it, because obviously he's got that injury history which just consistently cut him down. So we're just happy to have him on the park. But I think he's one that if he does get a consistent run at it, he's going to, really trouble opposition defenders as he has done in the past.
Well, it's not just his strength; he's an aerobic beast as well too. Like, he can cover the paddock, and there were circumstances last year where you'd see him up the ground, down back. I think there was the game that you drew down at,
Launceston.
He was up and back at that particular, and you're thinking, mate, this is what we want to see. He had a bad run with Melbourne his last year where he had 3 things happen to him in the space of a year. That was no good. And sort of struggled to get back, but really fingers crossed for that. But on the flip side, you lose Jeremy Finlayson, which I think a few people were a little bit surprised. Well, I know I was, that he had gone not to Port, but he left the Giants because it was like his position to lose. How big of an impact is that going to be for your mob this year?
Yeah, this is probably
who's going to fill in that spot.
Yeah, this is probably one that may be a bit polarising amongst the few GWS supporters there are, because I personally, like, Finlayson to me was a lot like how I've just described Riccardi, is that he can do some magnificent things, but when things aren't going his way, he's almost absent. Like, I think we saw 2019 grand final. I hate bringing that up, but he barely touched the ball because it wasn't getting down in the forward line, and he just doesn't have the work rate to get himself into the game in other ways. So, and that's why he was initially switched from the back line to the forward line, because he just doesn't have that, I guess, defensive instinct or that drive to, really get involved. So it's disappointing to lose a player that is good for averaging sort of a goal a game or a goal and a half a game. But I'm probably more optimistic about seeing guys like Riccardi or Himmelberg, or the opportunity to play 2 rucks given the chance.
So who the 2 rucks? Because Mummy's gone.
Yep.
He's at his 4th retirement. Yeah, you never know. He could be back by round 5. You never know. So who's going to take the rucks? Because you've got a couple of young blokes floating around now that can sort of slot into that. Who are those ones that you can see, like, taking number 1 and number 2?
Yeah, Matt Flynn is the one that everyone's most optimistic about, I feel. So he was a 2013 draftee, and he's, even when Mummy was sort of still moving well in 2017 and 2018, Flynn was the one that the club was talking up as sort of the successor. And he's had some injury issues, but he did get on the park last year and he impressed. He impressed when he was on there. He's good in the ruck. He's good with his follow-up work, but he can play forward really effectively as well, which I think is something that's so valuable for rucks, is to be able to spend as much time on ground as possible and not just be, a participant out there, but have an impact. And then obviously, like, our second big contender is probably Braden Pruce, and he missed last year. Yeah, big Melbourne legend, I hear. So,
we're a big fan of Prucey. I think everybody loves Pruce. I think people who watch football is just having a crack. Like Ruckman, they're big and dopey, right? But they're having a crack, and that's what it's all about. Like, and we see Prucey running around. He came to Melbourne, and look, he was stuck behind Gawn, but you also got to remember he trained with Gawn all that time. And then when things happened, Gawn goes down or whatever, he was able to step in.
Yeah. And
he got that opportunity at GWS. So good luck to him. And he's another one I think a lot of people just want to see. We just want to see them get on the park.
Just want to see him out there.
Exactly, because that's all we want. Hey, now, I've got to talk to you about your backline now, because there's a gentleman by the name of Phil Davis.
Yeah.
First player to virtually join the club. How much longer has he got?
Yeah, I don't think much longer. And as bad as that sounds, because I love what Davis has done for the club, but with how football's developing, he's not athletic enough to be able to do it week to week. And that's why, like, Sam Taylor is now easily our main key defender. We've seen Nick Haynes sort of have to play a more defensive role at times recently, which has been disappointing, but happens. We've gotten Jared Brander in as a delisted free agent from West Coast, and he's apparently been training in the back line, which is an exciting proposition.
Has he been training the house down?
Look, I'm not sure. I don't want to put any big calls out there, but I'd be surprised if he's not all Australian at this point. And then
this year?
Oh yeah, surely.
No. Remember, a year that they should make it, they defer it to the year after because apparently they haven't earned it unless you knick-knack.
And then we actually drafted a mature age player from the Sandford with pick 15 in the draft just gone in Lecker, and he's a really impressive specimen. Like he's so athletic. His contested marking is next level. He's a little bit raw on the football side of things. Like his skills aren't great, but I think given maybe half a season of work on that, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in and be a really big player for us.
Bangers. There's a lot of players playing in the AFL. I don't know if you've noticed that don't really have that much of a skill base. They're great athletes, but they can't kick. All right. Yeah. So he should fit in quite nicely if he's got that beautiful aerobic base.
Maybe we'll have 2 all-Australian key defenders then.
You got to get them past my boys, mate, May and Lever, but that's another conversation for another day. Rightio. So the back line, Hainsey, love a bit of Hainsey, and I love a bit of Sam Taylor as well too. Yeah. They're just Haynes is one of those guys that I think when they plan for teams, I know you've got your midfield, but he's one you've got to stop because he's got so much run, but he locks down on players and he's able to stop them. There's not many backmen that can stop, but also go the other way and be really, really destructive that way. Rightio. So North Melbourne's next recruit, Josh Kelly, was your Sheedy medalist last year. Now, is this guy the biggest tease? Because at the moment, I watch him and they keep going, Melbourne should have taken Kelly instead of Salem, etc. It keeps going on. But I look at the two and I go, I think I'd take Salem over Kelly. I don't know if I'm seeing something. Like, I think he's good, but like, is it the name factor over what he's producing? Because I don't know if I'm not seeing something. So convince me that Josh Kelly is the Josh Kelly that's being hyped, because I don't see it at the moment.
Yeah, well, he's my absolute favourite player. So
there you go. I'm in trouble now.
But yeah, look,
what makes him your favourite player?
Well, look,
gets the
at
juices
the start of his career, Kelly was probably given, I guess, a bit more of a free role where he could do what he wanted. And over the last couple of years in particular, he's almost taken a step back to, I guess, facilitate the ability to use guys like Callan Ward and Jacob Hopper in a better capacity. But he's still he's such a class player. Like, his disposal is so strong. He kicks with both feet, which is a massive thing in football for me. He's fast. He's got a good endurance. But I think last year he actually impressed me almost more than he ever has, because he was able to impact the scoreboard and really step up in big moments. So in our games against Sydney, especially that final, like, he stepped up and kicked a couple of goals and he was winning clearances and he just looked unstoppable. But I guess the downside is that he's not a greatly strong contested player. So when he's not getting the ball fed to him by our inside beast, then it's maybe a little bit hard for him to impact at the level that you'd like.
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest, that happens everywhere. Like, I think you're either going to be a really good outside or really good inside, or very good at both. I don't think you can be awesome at both. And if you are, there's only one or two that are able to do it, like a Dusty, like a perfect example of it. Yeah. He's going to grow. He's a big unit. Like, he's 6 foot. I thought he'd actually be taller. So I said a big unit, but he's actually 6 foot. I thought he would be taller. So he's probably he's actually smaller than most midfielders going around at the moment.
Which is weird, because you think 183, it's not short in the general population.
Tripsy's going around at 190 plus. So he's a midget compared to him.
Yeah.
But I will say he was actually pretty good in that final last year, especially the way that you won it. Oh, love it. It was a good, and you beat Essendon, and everybody knows I have a very, very dark spot for Essendon. So if you can beat Dons,
look, I'd love to take that compliment, but we beat Sydney. It was the Bulldogs that beat Essendon.
So I just love the way he played in that final last year. The way you beat Sydney, he was sensational.
Yeah, he was, and that's what I'm talking about. He steps up in the big moments, and I guess that's why he's so valuable to us. And I know that there's some hot discussion whenever he plays poorly about, oh, is he really worth $1 million a year? But, I think what he does in the big moments, it's worth it.
Well, I think for the first time in a while, you'd have some salary cap space, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well,
especially
with Jeremy
if Davis
Cameron
goes.
leaving.
Yeah, because if you had a couple leave.
Yeah.
And the other guys have been signed up for a while too.
Yeah, New South Wales probably isn't the best attraction to get big name players, though, is our biggest issue. So I like what we've been doing recently, which is sort of drafting players that we believe we can hold on to. And I think that in the recent years, everyone re-signing has showed that. So I think that's probably the way that we're going to have to build. If we could get a big fish, that'd be great. But you don't want to sort of waste it for the sake of getting a big fish.
Yeah, I think what we've noticed, especially over the last couple of years with COVID, with the salary cap being reduced, you can't get the big fish because you're $1 million plus short of what you're being able to offer. So you're not going to be able to get the big fish. But if you can get a couple of mid-sized fish and bring them in, and I like the way if you're drafting, especially from that New South Wales region, if you can draft from that pool, why would they want to go anywhere else? Because it's closer to home. They can stay within the state. They're not going to get locked out by Dan Andrews or good old Marky Mark over there in Perth. They're going to be able to go and visit family, etc. Rightio. Cornelio, captain still at the moment?
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, when you've got 3 captains, it's hard to call any of them captain.
I know. What's going on with him? Because at one stage he was one of the, I would have to say almost one stage top 5 player in the league. And that's a big call to make. And then what's happened? Is the captaincy taken over? Has he not been able to just concentrate on his footy because this is on the back of his mind?
Yeah.
Contract talks. What do you see from your perspective?
It's probably hard to nail down to one reason. I think it'd be sort of a combination of a few things. I'm not sure if you watched the Amazon Prime documentary during 2020, but yeah, through that, I think it was pretty obvious that he felt a lot of pressure as captain and maybe that he didn't believe his leadership was that good at times. So that would always sort of impact you in any facet of life. And then I think last year, obviously he came back and he had the poor 2020 season. He wasn't that bad, I think, for what he was deployed in doing, but he's a midfielder. I don't think you can force someone like Cornelio to adapt to being a forward pocket player when, he's captain, he's a big game player. He's another one that loves sort of the inside ball and being able to feed it out. So it's hard to pin entirely on him. But the good news is that apparently he'll be playing mostly in the midfield this year.
Oh, did he have an interrupted start to the year last year as well?
Oh, I can't remember from the top of my head. I'd say so because from memory he didn't play in our first few games, and I think like people were making the jokes about him still being dropped.
The reason why I say that is that if you've got that interrupted pre-season, you're behind the 8 ball as it is. Yeah. You want to be that 4-cylinder, that V8, let's just say. But if you're only running on 4, no matter what you do, by the time you get to 8,
everyone else has been there. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's going to be hard. But if he's had his full preseason, and that's also going to give him more confidence in his body, and it's also going to give him more confidence in the mind as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what he needs. Now, before we get into sort of the nitty gritty as we look into the season, not just from a GWS, but a little bit further, James Hird. What have you heard about Hirdy's influence so far? Because let's be honest, down here in Melbourne, when we heard Hirdy was going to GWS, etc., it's like, okay, did he pack the jabs, or did he take Danky with him? They were all like the subplots being asked as we go through this. But what have you heard so far about his influence? Because it's James Hird.
He's a big name.
I think he's got still a lot to offer. He is a big name. He has a presence. When he walks through the door, people go, hey, get a haircut. But besides that, he's Brello medalist, Norm Smith medalist, you name it, he's done it.
Yeah.
What are you hearing?
Not much, to be honest. Like, I'm still a little bit confused about what his role is because he was sort of signed as a leadership consultant. So I guess I think Billy Slater had a similar thing at St Kilda, but then we've been hearing that he's had an impact on training at times. So if he's been brought on and he's able to, I guess, offer assistance to our coaching and game plans and that, then that's an absolute win in my mind, regardless of controversy. He's got a great football brain. We all know that. So that's good. He's been a leader at a club, when it's struggled and on its absolute knees at times. So I think that he's got a lot to offer as a leadership consultant, especially for, guys like Canelio, who's had his noted issues, Green, who's had his noted issues, and then Callie, who not so much noted issues, but, people have asked questions there as well. So it'll be good to see his impact through the squad, and I'm hoping that, it's more than just a leadership role.
Yeah, I think from a mentor perspective, sometimes they just need that person that they can chat to. And the thing is, with your coaching group, you didn't change anybody last year. You virtually have not added anybody to your coaching group.
I think we lost one or two.
Yeah, you lost one, which I've got his name, but he wasn't anyone that I went, ooh, you've lost him. But to have him on board, so it just goes, they've got the consistency with your assistant coaches, etc.
Yeah.
Haven't heard you there. It could be just a small different voice from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you went 11-10 last year. Okay, you also had that draw against North.
Yeah.
Leon Cameron. Okay, this is the last one I want to ask about your group in particular. Leon Cameron, he's been there for many, many years. I think he's taken you to 5 of the last 6 final series. So he's got the runs on the board. But he reminds me a little bit of Cameron Green in the test team. Like, he can get a 60 and he can get consistency, like 1 or 2, 3 wickets, if you know what I mean. But he hasn't had that big bag. He hasn't had that 100. Like, it's almost he can't get to that echelon. Now, I know there was the preliminary finals, etc., and there was a grand final. But there just seems to be, can he take them to the hallowed ground or the hallowed grand final, hold that cup up?
It's an excellent question. I don't think anyone really knows. Really polarizing amongst the general AFL community, let alone the GWS community. So, I think some people think that he is the right guy for it, and maybe he just needs more assistance with assistant coaches. Maybe he needs some, more experienced heads in, or just someone to offer different ideas, which, we just spoke about. Hopefully Hurd can be someone like that. But yeah, I don't know, like, he's always sort of been noted as maybe a relationships coach. So he builds good connections with players and gains their support. But yeah, it's hard to argue with what happens on field is that we're inconsistent. We struggle when we're against momentum, and we haven't really been able to perform in any massive matches apart from when we play Sydney, which we always seem to play well, and then the Collingwood preliminary final.
It was a corker. I was at that game. Corker. Almost got the snot beaten out of me. Don't drink, by the way, listeners, don't drink too many Jimmy cans. Barrack for GWS right near the Collingwood cheer squad. Not a good idea. All right. So, yeah, that was a cracker of a game, I must admit. All righty. Let's go through it. So, 11-10. Are you going to go better than 11-10 and 1 draw this year, 2022?
Look, if I had to give a concrete answer, optimistically, I'd say yes. But I think more realistically, we'll probably be around the same mark. All
right, around the same. Okay, let's put the crystal ball out. Let's put the agates on the chopping board, as I've said many, many times before. Premiers for 2022. Who is it going to be and why?
Look, it's hard to look past Melbourne, as it always is with the reigning premiers. I think just how you played all year last year was phenomenal, and then the fight back in the grand final, I think that's probably the key for me, is having that mental strength to being able to fight against massive momentum is huge. And then, the absolute fucking prolificity in front of goal in that final quarter was ridiculous as well. So it's hard to tip against them. As a dark horse, I'd say maybe, I forgot who even finished top 4 last year. It was maybe Geelong. Maybe I'll put my neck down. Geelong. Maybe it's their year. They've been aiming for it for about 20, so surely.
Well, they have to get it this year. Otherwise, 3/4 of their list enter senior citizens category next year, and they'll be in the retirement home. But yeah, I think Geelong are priming themselves, but I think they need everything. And like I said to I think it was Terry on the Blues podcast. Geelong they went and kept their performances up by bringing in a mid-30s guy in Jonathan Segler and getting rid of a couple young 21, 22-year-olds. Good to see that they've got their target age group going again too, Geelong. So they have to have everything go right for them. Otherwise, you'll see what happened in that preliminary final.
Yeah.
Coleman medalist, do you have someone who's going to be kicking them through the big sticks more than anybody this year?
Geez, it's hard to pick one. I want to say Aaron Norton. I think that he's...
North. Yep.
Yeah, he's been really good with his contested marking and maybe lacked on the finishing a bit. So I just hope that he's worked on that over the preseason and we start to see him kick consistent backs.
Do you reckon he's got the fortitude to be that single forward? And why I say that is that when Bruce was in there, he was almost taking the second best forward second best backman, sorry. Now that he has to have all the attention put on him, has he got the capability or does he have the mental strength to take out that number one spot? That's my only concern, is he needs to have that second big guy there to free him up a bit.
Yeah, I haven't got any worries there. I think that he's shown that he can be that guy and can take, great marks against an outnumber amount of opponents. But, it's probably just the consistency in front of goal that would be the only thing working against me there, I think.
All right. Brownlow medalist.
Oh, it would have been Sam Walsh if he hadn't recently gotten injured. I don't know. Apart from that, there's no real other standouts.
Interesting. This is the first, I'm not sure.
Maybe, I mean, you're a Melbourne supporter, so I'll say Petrarca.
Oh, you don't have to say that. He is on the wall behind me. All right, I'll go with that. But we almost saw Gary Ablett win a Brownlow missing, I think, the last 6 or 7 games.
Yeah, 2013, I think.
Yeah. So once again, if Walsh comes back and everything, like I said, we can smell what the Blues are cooking, you just never know what can happen on Brownlow night. Absolutely. He's a midfielder, so he's guaranteed to get votes. Now, who's going to be the breakout player for GWS? So who's going to shine brighter than anybody this year?
Well, I've hyped him up enough, so I'll lock in Tom Green.
Tommy Green.
My candidate here. I think he could be an All-Australian calibre player this year.
Big call, but I do like the way he plays. I very much like the way he plays. Okay. Who's going to be the breakdown? So who's on their last legs? I'm sorry. Thank you. All the best with your future endeavours.
Is this league-wide or GWS specific?
It can be GWS, and you could even, let's throw a league-wide one there if that's something that you're thinking about as well.
Yeah, well, my answer was going to be Joel Selwood because I just reckon his injury history of late hasn't been great, and it's very clear that he isn't backing up his performances as consistently. So here's my bet league-wide. And then GWS, it'd be tie between Davis and De Boer. I think Davis we touched on, but De Boer's probably, as taggers go out of vogue and, more of our young mids are stepping up and commanding that place, he might struggle to find a spot in the team consistently.
And he's off contract at the end of the year as well too, so it's probably worth. But I still think there's room for taggers. Like if they tag someone in that GF last year, especially coming out of the centre, anything could have happened.
Well, I mean, who do you tag when Luke Jackson's following up?
All right. But you could tag Toby Green. You probably could tag Tom Green. You could tag Kelly. You still can. There is, but unfortunately, everything's a team defence these days. And it makes it harder for 17 to play 18. Now, what's a headline? What's a GWS headline? We've got to the end of the season. What's the headline that's going to be for GWS at the end of 2022?
Oh, geez, that's a hard one. I'd say optimistically, GWS make the grand final against all odds.
Ooh, GWS makes granny. You've got to be optimistic.
Yeah,
you have to have You have to think. You have to think forward. Look, listen. If someone who hosts Lace Out podcast, myself and my co-host Jamie the J-Dog Wallis, who's not with us tonight, he backs a Port Adelaide. He has to be optimistic. It has to be because they're not giving him much else, especially
if you lived around there.
He's exactly right. But, when your team hasn't won a grand final for 57 years and you've lived 45 of those, you've got to be optimistic. Yeah. So have a bit of hope out there. Now, you're probably listening to this voice, ladies, and you're thinking, okay, if I try and find PMBangers on Tinder, he ain't going to be there. You need to look up the name of Declan Reeve. That's who we're speaking to here because this guy is an absolute gun. So what are your hopes and dreams on the Reddit thread this year for GWS? Can people find you in other places as well, not just obviously hearing your dulcet tones here? Where can they hear or see your love for the GWS Giants?
I'm quite active on Big Footy, and Twitter, particularly in the draft space. So I do a lot of sort of draft watching for both the boys and the girls. So that's probably my niche interest. And if people have heard of me, it's probably from my work there.
Beautiful. And what I'll be doing is I'll be putting in his handles in the show notes so you can look him up and say, there's Bangers. All right, I want to look up Declan, as you would prefer not to be called. You can find him there as well too. So we'll whack him in the show notes. Not whack him, but we'll whack his details in the show notes. Hey, mate, I have been absolutely pumped to talk to you tonight. And the reason is that, you know, when GWS first started, it was the whole renter crowd. There was the Hare Krishnas standing behind the goals with their orange flags, etc. But now to finally, because I couldn't get one last year, but to be able to finally speak to someone who actually loves the club and is really passionate about their own club, someone that's only 11 years old, that's really, really great to see. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate everything. Keep sharing the love for your team because
thanks, mate. Thanks for having me on. I'm quite honoured that you think that.
You should be because you know what you should be because we only do 18 of these and there's only one person who gets to be for literally every club unless they've got mates that they want to bring on the show that they are. So you should be on it. Now, before we finish up, I have one question and one question only for you. Declan Reeve, a.k.a. PMBangers, the 2022 season previewer for the Greater Western Sydney Giants. How do you want your footy?
How do I watch my footy? Jeez. Usually at the pub.
No, how do you want your footy?
How do I want my footy? Oh, I'm not getting the visual cue here.
No, I told you at the start what to say. Lace out.
Oh, lace out, obviously. Yeah.
We'll do it again.
Like Jake McCarty.
How do you want? Just say lace out.
Yeah.
Just say lace out.
Lace out.
All right, awesome. There you go, listeners. There's your 2022 season preview for the Greater Western Sydney Giants. Could be an exciting year for them. We don't know what to expect at the moment, but Bangers, you're an absolute star. Have a great week, listeners, and stay tuned for the rest to come over the upcoming days. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Lace Out. Head over to iTunes and Spotify to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. And remember, join us every single Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on our Facebook page with yours truly, Christopher Pepper, and the co-host with the most, Jamie Wallis, giving you your footy how you want it. Lace out.